What's going on, guys? Back at it today with the new gank hunting video. This time I'm going to be featuring a build using the Dragon King Greataxe and a little bit of faith. If you have a strength faith build already, you can probably run something similar to what I do without too much trouble. I made a completely new character for my previous one though, and I wanted to optimize a little bit, keep the soul level as low as possible. I'm going to go into why I made the stance what they are, as well as the pros and cons of running a build like this. After that, I'm going to talk about some tips and tricks you can use with this character, and lastly show off some anti-ganks. My final version of the build wound up being soul level 111, but this is a result of me leveling Dex from the Cleric's base 8 up to 16, allowing me to change Havel's armor to the Lord's Blade armor and the Dragon King Greataxe to the Obsidian Greatsword, creating a new playstyle for the build with fast roll. If you aren't interested in being able to use the Obsidian Greatsword, you can keep Dex at 8 and have a final soul level of 103, which I recommend. The main form of this build mid-rolls with 40 Vitality and 40 Endurance, along with 34 Strength to two-hand the Dragon King Greataxe. For spells, I have 30 Faith and 14 Attunement. I fill my 3 spell slots with Sunlight Blade, Great Magic Barrier, and Wrath of the Gods. I spent the majority of my time on this build without Wrath, as I really wanted to make a build that didn't need it. It works fine when you can buff up, but if you get spawn camped, which I found happening almost every time, it's impossible to get out of the corner. As a result, I teched in Wog to give me the early game space I need. The Dragon King Greataxe is tied for the second heaviest weapon in the game at 24 units, second only to Smo's Hammer. This makes it nearly impossible to have any real poise and light roll. I opted to make this a mid-roll build instead, wearing the Crown of Dusk and any armor I can manage to maximize poise. I was able to get to 77 without the Wolf Ring, which suited my needs just fine. The weight problem necessitates the use of Havel's Ring, but the other slot is optional. I mostly switched between the Wolf and Hornet Rings, and came to the conclusion that neither is strictly better. The optimal strategy is likely to invade while wearing the Wolf Ring, and switch to the Hornet Ring after you've been able to buff up without getting killed in the spawn camp. The Hornet Ring doesn't really give you consistent one-hit backstabs against anyone at this soul level, but it's still bonus damage. You could choose to use Favor and Protection or nearly anything else as well. That's the build, so let's talk about the good and bad. When talking about this build, you've got to talk about the weapon, because that's what it's basically all about. The Dragon King Greataxe is insanely heavy, no damage scaling, and has a ridiculous 50 strength requirement to one hand, 34 to 2. As a result, for regular attacks, it is strictly and significantly worse than the Demon's Greataxe, the Great Club, and many other high-strength weapons. With this being said, the only thing it has over those weapons is the special R2 attack. It creates a large, high-damage AoE with the axe at the center. To make a long story short, I don't really think it makes up for the weaknesses of the weapon. You lose the one-shot backstabs that a Demon's Greataxe or Great Club would afford you, which is a loss that cannot be overstated. As a result, I would have to consider this more of a for fun build than a meta one. You can do some cool things with it, but it underperforms at this soul level. If you're interested in running a build like this, I would recommend planning to use the Demon's Greataxe instead, and then just use this on the side, see how it feels. To show off the good, I'll start talking about the tips and tricks you can keep in mind while playing this build. You might have noticed in the last clip that someone tried to parry me, and I responded by doing a 180 as I swung the R2 down. This is the easiest way to counter someone trying to reaction parry you, and works best if you already know they're going to try to do it. The R2 does do more damage if you connect with the blade as well as the AoE, but you can still do over 1000 with just the shockwave. As a result, getting parried isn't your chief concern when using the R2. Backstab punishes are much more common and much harder to avoid. After getting backstabbed while using it enough times, you get a feel for what is and isn't safe. In my experience, it was largely based on how good the other players are and whether or not they know you're going to be using it. If you've been spamming it, even an average player will start to roll backstab you. Even if you're using it sparingly, a good player will be expecting it when they see the weapon and will be looking for that punish. It's not so bad that I would consider it a gimmick, but you can't use it as your go-to move in the same way you can with something like a Moonlight Greatsword R2. Despite all this, it's still the reason why you would even use this weapon over something else, so you need to find ways to work it in effectively. As with most weapons in this game, it's super effective against punishing mid-rolls, but it's not consistent enough to follow up a backstab on someone fast-rolling. The most success I've had with it is to use it at a range where someone thinks they can backstab you in time and turn around at the last second, or to use it on someone that thinks you don't see them and turn around while they try and sneak up. Alternatively, since you already know people want to backstab you when you're using this weapon, just equip the Hornet Ring and be ready to counter backstab the people that are looking for it. There are other dead giveaways as to when someone's just going to be fishing for backstabs. In this case, it's a Havel Mom using the Great Club, so you already know what they're up to. I'm going to let this play out a little bit so you can see how I try and catch the wake-ups with the R2 and it really just doesn't work. My timing isn't perfect, but at the same time, if they know it's coming, they can just time their roll. Here's a little tip for this specific situation. If you know someone is backstab fishing and they're running directly away from you, chances are they're going to try and do a 180 and run behind you. Instead of trying to catch them and backstab, keep your distance and be ready to back up right after they turn around. When he tries to face my back, he winds up just showing me his instead. As one last little tip, and to close out this invasion, if someone only has one direction to go, lock onto them and stand in the way. Here, the host tries to roll past me, and my view automatically tracks his back. Mid-rolling is particularly weak against spellcasters, which makes Great Magic Barrier a natural choice to include. It's extremely underrated, and nearly nullifies all magic damage. There's often at least one caster in a gang squad, and this miracle allows you to either ignore them entirely, or single them out for an unlosable 1v1. It's weak to spawn camping, as you won't always get the chance to cast it. Make space with Wog, and cast this as soon as possible. Try and pay attention to the weapon someone is using when deciding your next move with Barrier already up. If they're a pure caster, or if they're using a Moonlight Greatsword, they won't do any damage to you for the duration of the miracle. If they have a physical scaling weapon as well, don't get careless, especially with your R2. That's enough of that, let's get to the ganks. This one's a bit confusing right out the gate. I noticed that there's two hosts, or at least two players, neither of whom are glowing. Not knowing which one's the real host doesn't really change my game plan. One of them peels off to fight a different phantom, and I start off taking the 1v1. I watch the way he's posturing. First he has the small shield out to parry, and as soon as he two-hands it, I know his strategy changes. Here I can tell that he's exclusively going for backstabs. I keep this in mind for the rest of the invasion. The jumping attack follow-up catches roll forward and roll forward only, so it's a terrible choice. The host notices how little damage it does to me through my Great Magic Barrier with his enchanted weapon and backs off. I then notice that the other guy is using a katana. Now I know that I'm only being attacked by one person and my back is to the wall, preventing a backstab. All of this tells me that I can safely use an R2 right after waking up. I expected the host to come up behind me, so I prep an R2, but it just winds up catching the other guy in the back. I thought that guy might have been the host, which would have ended things, but it turns out he was a phantom. I remember from before that this guy wants to backstab me, so I try and bait him out with a heal. I would have got the circle stab there if that message didn't pop up, and then I panic R2 and get hit myself. I counter the backstab chain attempt by locking on while getting up. I could tell my heal bait was going to work before, so I decided to just try it again, this time without a message getting in the way. It doesn't quite work out, but he keeps trying to circle stab me for some reason, and then I get it eventually. Again, don't use this follow-up. It works against only one option, and even then it's not that consistent. I know exactly what he's going to do. Sure enough, he tries to circle around me again, and I get the last backstab I need. Plan your strategy ahead of time based on how they play, but also be ready to make quick decisions based on what's happening in the moment. Here I'll be showing one of many cases where running this build feels terrible because of how much better a different weapon might perform. Two of us spawn in at the same time, making them a little wary of attacking the spawn. We both buff up and take the fight to them. The host has been running this whole time, and I feel like he won't be ready to punish this. I use it even though it could have been backstabbed, and get the hit. He's trying to get back to his phantom so they can cover for each other and heal. Here I make a mistake. You can clearly see that the phantom's trying to circle around for a backstab on my right side. I should have also circled to my own right, but instead I go to the left and he gets the advantage. One tiny decision like that, to go left or right, can make a huge difference. If he was running a different build, I could have just got one shot. He tries to cover for the host rather than finishing me off, misses his backstab, and I pick up one of my own. If I was running a better weapon here, like the Demon's Greataxe, I would have killed him in one backstab without a doubt. Instead, I do manage to pick up the second one, but it's something that could make a difference again. Same thing here, this could have been a one-shot. After the knockdown, he has several options that I want to try and cover as best as possible. Both myself and the other red are behind him, so it's most likely he would want to roll forward and to the left, trying to get to the stone bridge. Expecting this, I run forward on his left side in R2, causing him to choose a different direction, and he simply gets caught by the shockwave. I did use the R2 to pretty good effect in this invasion, but when you're deciding what build you want to run, keep in mind the demerits that come along with it. An unexpected benefit of using Great Magic Barrier is that it can scare people off. Here, the Phantom likely thinks that I'm actually casting Tranquil Walk of Peace, causing him to run away instead of punishing me. Deciding I don't have enough time to cast Sunlight Blade, I use an R2 to scare him off, and then just run around for a backstab. I quickly turn my camera to see if I can be punished with a backstab. I can't, so I use an R2 and kill them both. When people get stuck on a corner like that, they usually just spam rolls, and you can time it so you catch them at the end. I see the Phantom's Moonlight Greatsword and cast Great Magic Barrier immediately. The host doesn't start moving until well after it's done, and I have time for Sunlight Blade as well. Great Magic Barrier blocks all of their damage, and I'm able to mid-roll through Wog and get a backstab. Mid-roll may not be the best, but if you know what they're planning on doing, it's more than good enough to dodge attacks and get successful punishes. It's really only unusable when it comes to running away, so as long as you face everyone head-on, you'll do just fine. I arrive on scene and buff up for a 2v2. I see the Phantom moving strangely to the left, and my initial plan is to pretend I don't see him and catch him with a surprise R2. It turns out that he was just trying to heal, so I gang up on the host instead. After seeing that, I know he's going to rush back as fast as possible, and he's not paying enough attention to prevent himself from getting backstabbed. I know which direction he's going to want to escape, and I try and cut it off, but it's hard to catch the ninja flip with the R2. The other invader thinks he died, and I have to chase and get one more backstab with the kill. At this point, we realize the guy's just cheating, so we bully him for a little while. There's not too much you can do about people like this, and at the end of the day, we outplayed them, so I still consider it a win. This one starts out as a 2v3. They're afraid to approach either of us, and we have plenty of time to buff up. I try to capitalize on my ally's twop, but I can't do too much without hitting him as well. I try to pick up the backstab here, but accidentally do a running attack and get punished myself. Here, I make note of several things while waking up. The guy who backstabbed me is opting to stay on that side for the punish at a slight distance, and has a weapon that can't break my poise before I can finish an R2. The other invader is getting chased by the host and second Phantom, so I won't be interrupted by them either. Lastly, as a result of me having the 1v1 instead of the 1v2, it's my job to get this kill while the other invader just survives and distracts. With all this in mind, I choose a Wake Up R2 to punish. I notice here that he runs way too far away during the escape, and there's no way he can properly punish me if I just use the same move again. As I expect, he does try to, and I pancake him for an instant kill. On the other side of things, the other invader has already taken care of one Phantom, and we can just clean up the last kill. I herd him towards the other guy with an R2. The host gets a little too swing happy, and I pick up one last backstab. I think you get the idea at this point. Ultimately, I was let down by the weak base AR of this build and the fact that it can't one-shot. When you see people with similar stats doing something like this, it makes me feel like I'm just using a gimped version. Either way, it was still fun to play, and it's a good choice to switch up the monotony if you already have a strength faith build. I'm going to throw in some more clips without commentary, as the gameplay loop is pretty simple and there isn't too much more information to provide. You can stick around for that if you want, and subscribe if you want to see more like this in the future. For now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.